Hi, everyone. Happy Sovereign Sunday.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for being here today. We have a very special episode today. We're back. Happy New Year.
It's been a while. Well, we had our inaugural show 2 weeks ago for the new season. But yeah, we have an amazing show today. We love our next guest. He is very special to us. His name is Kale Ka'alekahi. And I met him on the island of Maui. He is he's indigenous to Maui, although he was going to talk about it. He has ancestry from many different places, including Europe and Native American lineage as well. But Kale performed our wedding ceremony. It was a beautiful, amazing ceremony on Maui, and Vanessa is going to talk a little bit more about that later. While we wait for Kale to get logged in, we wanted to share some information previews about our next couple of shows. So our next show is going to be with Charlie and Shelley Wininger. Charlie is the author of Listening to Ecstasy, The Transformative Power of MDMA. He is a psychotherapist and has been using MDMA in his relationship with his wife for many, many years as a therapeutic element. And we were really excited when Charlie's book came out like a year ago or so, because we had already been using MDMA therapeutically in our relationship, and it really just kind of evolved naturally. We may have seen some research on it.
We read a couple of articles of people who had also worked with MDMA that way, and that's kind of how we were like, oh, this is an interesting thing to try out.
Yeah. So when the book came out and I read the book, I was like, wow, we had this like very similar experience to Charlie and his wife, and it was like really it was a little bit validating that we kind of intuitively stumbled through this and kind of created this thing where we used MDMA as a therapeutic, along with talk therapy between the two of us. Mm-hmm. And we were able to
work through
resolve a bunch of traumas using MDMA as a tool. And now the research is just phenomenal. They're doing trials right now. MAPS is in its third phase trial for MDMA-assisted talk therapy, and they expect it to be FDA approved by next year, 2023. So things are really looking exciting. Then after that, we're going to be on a road trip. We're going down to Austin, Texas to speak at the Greater Reset. This is really cool too, because we're going to be sharing the stage with amazing people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Ben Swan and James Corbett, and a lot of really cool people that we're going to be sharing the Foster Gamble that we're going to be speaking with or speaking alongside. So that's really exciting. We're going to be talking about spiritual sovereignty and how our physical sovereignty really is sourced from our spiritual sovereignty. And we're going to cover that with Kale as well, because that's all part of the concept of re-indigenization. So without further ado, Kale is logged in. Kale, is your camera on? There you go.
Sorry. I was trying to get everything ready on the computer, and then it just like kind of shut down. And so I was like, oh, shoot, I got to go to my phone. So I'm on my phone now. How are you? You two look great.
Good. We had
so
a little
bit
of...
Thank you.
You're there in the New Blood Old Soul studio?
Yeah, in the studio with the pole and the and the rings and the cold plunge.
Very cool.
Yeah. It's our little I got the drums too. It's our little our lab, the forge.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. We might as well get started talking. Tell us about New Blood Old Souls and what this new project that you have going on.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. First and foremost, just stoked to be here with you both. Should I turn my camera? So it's more
like. might give you a little bit of a wider perspective.
Does that work? Is this happening good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, just stoked to be with you both again. Haven't seen you two in a little bit. Well, I've seen Danny. I haven't seen you, Vanessa, in a while. Yeah, so it's good to see you. And then yeah, thank you for having me. And so the project of New Blood Old Souls. It's something that just kind of came about from the different work that me and the brothers have been doing out here at Pasha, Marco, and Koa. And just some of the things that we've been seeing through our journeys, especially with like Sacred Sons, which brought us together, but then even in our own personal experiences. So New Blood Old Souls is in the name, depending on what you emphasize more. New Blood Old Souls. We are the embodiment of genealogy from a time before, or is it the future? So it's not a linear time understanding. It's constantly crisscrossing and spiraling. So New Blood Old Souls is a project for us to harness our energies together and to bring about this new old way. And that involves, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual understanding. So none of it's separate. So we want to create a cohesive way. And so we all bring our different gifts. So kind of like we've learned so much through our lives that it's almost like you get a degree or a certification, right? Mm-hmm. And then you feel this identity coming from it because you're like, oh yeah, I've achieved. There's a level of expertise that I've attained. For us, we've like thrown that all out. We're just like, yeah, that's good. That's part of the experience, but that's not the whole thing. Mm. So we're kind of ripping up our certifications.
I love that.
And looking at others too is like, hey, maybe it's not just about that. Maybe there's something more there for us. But what's stopping us from getting there is because we've chosen to put so much identity or so much emphasis or so much attention towards getting the piece of paper. So how do we do it? Well, this is a new kind of frontier, another realm that I haven't really experienced before in my life. So it's steadily going. Sometimes I feel like an astronaut, but I haven't left. Like going into this other realms. Yeah. So I don't know. Did that explain it? I think I'm better with questions. I don't know. Sometimes I just kind of start talking. I don't know what I'm talking about.
You're amazing at explaining, getting right to the heart of something, right? So you explain the heart. How about a little bit of the practicality? What does that look like in the studio?
Yeah, so great, wonderful. So typically for us, Pasha will be leading a biomechanics class. So this place will pretty much be filled with people, and they'll be going through different fascial lines in the body. Whether that's a spiral or with the arms, the front, back, even lateral lines. And so typically, like if we have that going on, you'll have a setup here, working there, and then a treadmill, and then a cold plunge, right? Mm-hmm. And now the other portion is, before we even get into all that, we circle up with people. It's co-ed, both men and women, and just tap in. Normally we ask like a would you rather question. It's like, would you rather be blind or not remember anything? And then how people answer that, you're kind of like, oh, I see where you're at. Or like, or like, would you rather have your feet or your hands? Like stuff like that. And then it just kind of gets to the core of it. And then we also have ceremonies. So we have a Discord with people and communications with certain peoples about when certain ceremonies are happening, whether it's like a sweat lodge or we're all meeting at like Iao River or something like that. So it's like the messages keep coming through, right? So if you're experiencing the class in a physical way, there'll be more asks of you as you go along. You just have to show up. Mm-hmm. What you learn here should carry over to what you learn, say, at a fire ceremony or, like a drum lesson. It's not separate. Because the idea is that when you're embodied, you actually are able to feel and activate your body in all the ways. And the spiritual and emotional things that do come up from that, it's like you have to register. You have to pay attention to what that flow is and what that feels like. So Yeah, I guess for me, it's more of like a lived experience. It's not a concept. I feel like a lot of people conceptualize spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, it becomes something like a commodity almost. It's a spiritual materialism.
Right.
Because we can acquire many concepts, we can acquire a lot of information and knowledge, supposedly. And so when we function in that, thinking that we know, and then we start to experience life, it almost hinders us because we have an idea already. You're already actively changing the experience because of what you've chosen to hold on to as information or data.
Mm-hmm.
So now your interpretive lens is coming from that. So our New Blood Old Souls kind of project is just to bring people more into this understanding of it's not about how much information you've gathered or data or experiences. Like that's part of it, but then let's start on this adventure. Let's try this journey together and see what shows up, what emerges from there. And that's why I really like the this phrase of the an emergent culture of awakening, because we all awaken to something every day.
Mm-hmm.
Sleeping is that little death, and then you wake up and it's like, oh, the sun rising and and all that beautiful things. So did that help?
Absolutely. I really
Oh,
love
yeah.
this is one of the things that you specifically have not just taught me but modeled for me is the embodiment. And Sacred Sons in general, the Sacred Sons leadership and being a part of Sacred Sons has really taught me how to bring the knowledge and the wisdom that I've learned into my heart and really embody it. And now moving deeper into like more physical embodiment, right? And I feel like that's what New Blood Old Souls is. It's taking these spiritual concepts and bringing it more into a physical practice, so that you're fully balanced, mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
entirely.
I just have like really lived this with you, like just learning this alongside you and watching you and being inspired by you and Pasha and Marco and Adam and everybody. Like this is one of the biggest lessons I've pulled away this past year has really been bringing it down into my body and embodying it. And I have some cool stories that you have not heard yet that I want to, but hold on.
Please share.
Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit. I want you to just define for our audience re-indigenization versus decolonization.
Yes. So there's many ways to interpret it, because I'm not the first one to talk about in indigenosity or indigenizing or anything like that. And I'm also not the first one to approach it, decolonization either. So this is just purely coming from my understanding. So there's a route, that is taken depending on our reference point, right? So to me, the reference point, if it's saying like there is such a thing as colonization and it has happened, what are the effects, right? The possibilities and consequences of the colonization. And so many people have different attitudes towards it because somehow it places that there is the colonizer and the colonized, right? There is the master and the slave. And so to decolonize from that is the reference point of like, well, this is who did it, this colonization, and they come from a certain place, they act a certain way. And so in order for that to change, you have to decondition it. You have to unlearn it to relearn something else. That to me is like decolonization.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go into these gatherings with people and then I ask them, what does it feel like when I say decolonization? Many people say things like disconnected, or like not at home, or there's a problem. I'm the problem. Like I feel like I'm the problem. It creates a thing of like, you have to do this work because you're the issue here and you don't belong until you get it right, because of like all the things. So it puts some kind of responsibility on people who weren't even there for it,
Mm-hmm.
who at no fault of their own are experiencing the same things too, whether they are colonized or colonizer. So that's how I see it. So for me, it's like And on the other side of the spectrum is a re-indigenization. So what does that mean? To be of a place, to be claimed by a place, not to do the claiming, to be at home, to belong. So when I reference re-indigenization, it gives people hope. You know, they hear it and they say like, oh, I can do that too. Like, I don't just have to get rid of all the things that are bad or evil, that have committed so much atrocities and things in our society. I can actually learn how to be of these places and actually be a part of something that puts me into the spiritual ecology. So how do you belong somewhere? Re-indigenization is like, how do you understand like what you are amongst so that you can play your part in the bigger story? You know, it's a radical act of belonging to re-indigenize. It's gonna take from you everything and give to you all the things you didn't even know were there. To decolonize is needed too. But there is a polarization that happens with both. So a lot of times I get confronted with it as well. You know, how far do we go into this re-indigenization? And then forget that, like, even though the framework is being asked to change, some people still cannot let go of certain things because they're so habituated and it's so ancestral, you know? It's an ancestral genetic thing. So I guess my call or my plea is to look towards how do we be of a place to be claimed by places again. So the emphasis is on the re-indigenization more so for me than to decondition and to decolonize. Other people are doing that work. You know, this is my work.
I think that for me, the way that feels to me is that decolonization is kind of the outside work, and re-indigenization is more the internal. And I would argue, while we need both, I would argue that probably decolonization would be more effective and maybe more holistic if you re-indigenize first, right? Like if it's coming from a place of connection to spirit, then when you do that decolonization work, you're not going to do it in a way that ostracizes people or creates disconnection, but you're going to do it in a way that creates more connection, calls people in, And for me, as a white American, like that was something that I really struggled with. Like, oh, my lineage is colonizer. So what do I do with that? What's the culture that I grew up in? Capitalism, nothing. I really don't have any culture, or I didn't have any culture, or I wasn't in touch with my culture, I should say. Because now, since Vanessa started digging into her lineages and then meeting you and you discussing your lineages, that inspired me to start looking into my own Celtic roots. And what I learned was I'm not only part colonizer, but I've also been colonized as well. The Romans came and wiped out the Celtics, the Celtics, and forced us into Catholicism and took away our, indigenous spirituality, which was to be in balance with nature, which is very similar to what you've expressed and what Vanessa has expressed about her. So that helped me create or feel unified with Vanessa, with you, with everybody. It's like, oh, we all come from the same source. And is the one that helped me make that connection, that really it all goes back to being in balance with nature, which is balance with spirit, right?
Totally. And I appreciate that understanding so much, like the perspective of it, because it is an inner and outer work. And at the same time, there is no white culture. It doesn't exist. There's no brown culture. There's no like black culture. It's just not there, because that is supposing that there's a monolith of understanding for every person that has a certain skin tone or skin color.
Yeah, right.
It's not true. It's not true. We've all come from different places and in our own ancestry, and then we've also been born in places that we are born in. Like it's nobody's fault, necessarily in that sense. Things have happened, right? So let's say, like, even with the Celtic, that ancestry is full of what we would term as colonization today. So is Polynesian culture. We are not, like, even Native American culture, we are not separate from this idea of a colonizer. It was just called something different. People assume it's like, tribal warfare, this and that. And it's like, no, you have to be involved with the culture to truly understand what it is that they were doing. And I can't give answers. That's something that you have to explore for yourself. Like you're saying, Danny, like being with Vanessa has helped you understand, like, oh, I'm not a white person. You know, I actually have roots in other places, and I'm here now. I have a piece of me in other places that I don't know about and I've never seen before, but it has brought me here. So how do I bring that to this present moment here where I'm at? Yeah, what were you saying?
I think that some of what tends to happen with the whole decolonizing, where it can get to a place where it creates more separation, is where we get to a point where we also become colonizers in the efforts to decolonize. Right? You become that which you're fighting, because then we're saying
Exactly.
you're bad. You're inherently bad because of the color of your skin as well. And then it creates this guilt, this shame, and under the guilt and the shame, resentment begins to build. And then we can't create connection from that place. Whereas from a place of re-indigenization, like Danny says, coming into connection with his ancestral roots, he can empathize, he can then say, oh, I don't need to claim something else. I don't need to colonize anything because I have my lineage. I have my ancestral roots. I have my indigenous culture, ideas, philosophy, all of it, right? There's no need. You're not coming from a place of lack. Now you're coming from a place of abundance.
Totally. And that's what I appreciate about that, about your perspective too, Vanessa, because it's like, it's very easy for people to be caught in the identity, right? Labeled again. Like I said, tear up the certificate.
Yeah.
Tear up the degree. You know, because it's very easy to look at like, oh, this is an indigenous person because they look this way. Oh, this is a native person because they look this way. You know, like I look a certain way, so immediately people are like, oh, this is an indigenous person. However, if you didn't know like the work that a man was doing, no matter what his skin tone, or a woman, no matter what skin color they have, they would show up in their behavior and the way that they are. So like you're saying with some of the aspects of decolonization, it can create a separation to where it's more about the race now, right? So you're still playing in the same game, the same framework. You're just using different language, and it's like it's almost like you reversed it, and it's still happening. So what I'm trying to get to is like, how do we create this, like how you said, rather than lacking or separating, how do we bring into this kind of interrelated understanding? It's an ecology, a study of relationships, and re-indigenization helps do that. It's not the cure-all, it's not the remedy for all, but it's like reframing it. And this is why I say, like, you can have an understanding of never forget or always remember.
Yeah.
Both of those are asking different things of you. Some people have said that they're the same thing, you're just using different words. I'm like, yeah, go deeper.
Yeah.
You know, go deeper. Go
It's
deeper
really
than that. Like,
it's really a perspective, Vanessa was saying, of lack or abundance.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
It's how you're coming at it, looking at it.
Yeah.
The negative
and so where do we want to be?
Colonize.
Yeah.
The positive perspective.
Exactly.
Re-indigenize.
Yes.
I love it.
And so I love the play on the words, and I love the poetic nature of everything. You know, even in just like subtle hand gestures. You know, I talk with my hands a lot, and like, because there's certain things that are being emphasized in my words, you know? So, and there's also a deeper understanding of what that's conjuring. So re-indigenization can conjure something else. It's another spell, you know, or it breaks a spell. You know, the way I can say it too is like when you fall in love, you know, you're just so much in love. You're addicted to it. It's intoxicating. And you're like, this is so much fun. But you're under a spell, and that's where this word of like pretty comes from. It's actually an old word in Old English that means to be tricky. Like, it's tricky. You know, because falling in love is tricky. You know, because you don't even know why. It's just you feel this magnetism and this attraction to someone, and like, sure, physically they look great. Sure, you're attracted to them physically, but then when you actually fall in love, it's because there's something deeper there. And now you're playing a different game, because now you're working with gods and goddesses that are about the sensation, and they're about fortune, and they're about, you know, charming, and, you know, pretty is like what we say for women, but it actually comes from a word of being tricky, not to be a trickster or tricked, but it's like they embody the muse, right? The muse, and then that's so attractive. You're just like, oh, And then for men, we say handsome. And handsome comes from a word of being of use, having utility, like the hand, able to create, to craft. So what does that tell you about relationships between men and women? I mean, this is obviously a hetero example I'm giving, but it's like a woman's attractiveness to a man is because of like he's able to do, like he can do things, he can protect, he can provide, he can build, he can cultivate, he can be of service to something. And then she's like, oh, that's really handsome of him. You know, he shows up with all these gifts, and like he'll like give me a sound bath in the bathtub. So handsome, you know what I mean? And then for a woman, she's like, hey, I'm gonna play these cute little games with you, and you know, wash you and take care of you because you had a long day. You know, she's so pretty. She's like, she teaches, like, this is just my experience. She teaches how a man can be tender and to be softened by the feminine. You know, not just to be civilized and domesticated, but to actually feel into a deeper part of himself. You know, that's a re-indigenization, to fall in love. You have to fall in love with the places that love you back. You know, love what loves you back. You know, and it's really hard at times because you think you know what it is. Here we go again, right back to it. I got the certification, I got the degree. I've been on the therapy circles. I've been on the tour, and like I've seen everything. And then now your whole framework and perspective of what it is already caught up. Like you snared yourself. You hanging dangling a tree from your leg because you don't even, you're not able to be with the mystery. There's too much certainty, not enough uncertainty. There's too much, you know, expectation and not enough imagination. You know, things that can just be. Yeah.
That's beautiful. He's just mesmerized.
Yeah, I love sitting and listening to you.
I wanted to share something with you, about the last time I saw you, which was last year when you did our marriage ceremony.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking a lot about it recently, and especially in the context of re-indigenization, that a few months ago, one of our friends asked, why did you get married? And for me, it was a really interesting question because I understood that I don't believe in like the permanence of things, right? If Danny and I are married, I don't necessarily believe that means like now you're bound to me forever by law or by whatever, right? For me, it felt like a celebration, right? We go through all of these changes, we grow, we shift, and going to Maui last year was a little bit of a we transmuted a lot on that trip. We kind of came full circle from where we had been years before, and we healed a lot in Maui. Danny took me to all of the places you took him during Maui Prime. and we did.
That's a good man. That's a good man.
Yeah. He was like, I have to show you all of these places. And we did ceremonies in all of the places that you introduced him to. And so it felt like we had transmuted and closed out cycles. Like, okay, yeah, this is healed now. This is there's a deeper level of healing in this situation, or we've gone to a new place in this situation. And so to close out that trip in that celebration of that ceremony felt like we were celebrating that huge shift. And it felt so beautiful to hear your words, to hear your prayers and your intentions for us, be standing by the ocean, to feel the elements all around us. I felt like we were held by the entire universe. And I wrote that on my Instagram post, and one of my friends commented, it's like you didn't just marry each other, you married all that is. And I was like, that's what Kale did for us. Kale married us all that is. And I feel like from that moment forward, we have committed to being more intentional about life, being more ceremonious about life, of showing up into life as ceremony. And that has kind of been our theme for the past year. Since then, actually, it feels like we have kind of integrated this idea of life as a ceremony. And so every single situation that occurs in our relationship is a ceremony. Last week, arguing. Like we were arguing, tears. I was like, I don't know what's happening. And at the end of the day, we were having our gratitude practice with our son, and Danny said, I'm really grateful for all of the fighting we did today. He goes, because we transmuted and we cleared a lot of things. And I was like, yeah. And him saying that was like, yeah, that was a ceremony. We had a ceremony, and it was an argument, and there was crying, and there was purging. We let things out, said the things that needed to be said. And I feel like the words that you share, the way you express yourself, it reawakens that. I feel like it unlocked that part of our memory that said, yes, all of it is sacred. Every single moment is sacred. Every disagreement is sacred. Every interaction is sacred. And I feel so grateful to you for that ceremony, because I do feel like that was more than a wedding ceremony. That was an activation. And I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And I praise is well received, and this is why I love talking to you both too, because we shared a beautiful moment together, and the way that you see it is so in alignment with how I feel about what's happening. And that's why I say it's praises, because it's not like a compliment. You know, a compliment is just like, hey, great job at the thing, you know, or whatever. Or praises is like, remember that time when we did this, and then you showed up like that, and then we did this thing, and then it just was like boom, and then now I'm like, whoa. Like, that's like praises to me. And at the same time, well received, thank you. And also, like, for me, in those moments of ceremony, I'm just a conduit, just a medium, you know, to hold space for that. And what shows up shows up. That's why I prefer the elemental over the person, right? So it's like, if we're elemental beings, right? And I say if because it's not a guarantee, is it has to be noticed and recognized, like how you guys are saying. It's like, we didn't just get married to each other, we got married to all that is. How do you even understand that? Like you can't talk about it, you have to actually do it and experience it, right? And so like, it's good to share, you know, because it's like, people want to know your stories. They do, and that's beautiful. Yet they can't conceptualize the thing. They can't capture the essence because they weren't there, but they can have an idea. And so that's why it's like, being as a person that is in ceremony, like how you said, life is a ceremony, whether you're getting married or you're having an argument. It has to do with what you are witnessing, like not just visually, but like, what are the sensations that are coming in when this is happening? Am I just having an argument just to get my voice heard, or am I actually listening to what's happening? You know, now that ceremonial aspect is, it doesn't just end here, it continues. There is a thread that continues through it all, from the marriage, from the argument, from the gratitude circle, from the praises of other people. There's a common thread that is there. That's an indigenous way of seeing it. That there's a storyline that continues to move through you, and that's why life is a ceremony. It's not just because you said so. That's one of the bigger things that I'm seeing happening, is like, because I said so, it is. But it's like, how are you leaving a relationship open so that something else can come through? If you're just determining it for yourself, then that's all ego. That's just all rational, logical, what is that called? Like modern mind, you know, speaking, but it's not heartfelt. And so that's why I say, it's like, in those moments, I'm just a conduit. Like, Kali doesn't really exist at that time. Because I'm trying to bring through for myself a way to be an active participant, but on the backseat. It's you two. It's you two in your ceremony and what you both are experiencing. Because my prayers are given to me by the elements. So they're just speaking through. And then what you receive is what you need. And then it'll show up later on in life. That's how life is a ceremony. The ceremony doesn't necessarily end. So that's the beautiful thing about you're saying when Danny was here and he took you to all the different places. Like, yes, like let's have more ceremony in those places, right? We're not opening up portals. We're not trying to write our name in a tree or stack stones and like leave them there. We're coming to this place to be absorbed and immersed, right? To be devoured amongst the beauty of nature and the elements. And that's where the ceremony resides. It's so far outside of us, but we get to participate. We get to have a little, just a little bit of a taste of some good nourishment. And that too is like company, like the word company. I probably shared this with you before, but to be together, calm. It's in like communication, so to speak. And then pan, bread. You're a good company. You sit together, you share bread, you share food. That's good company. But now we've kind of used it in the marketplace, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a company that sells this. There's a company that offers this service. It's like, maybe we've gotten so far away from what we're actually trying to do, what we actually mean to do.
Yeah.
But we just kind of like snatched it up and put it into another framework. So anyway, thank you for that sharing, because it's a good reminiscence for me too. And it reminds me of like where I'm at. Like I'm able to understand who I am and where I'm at through the eyes of others, and being able to receive and give. So it's a sacred reciprocity. Yeah, always. And I think it's harder for me just as a person to just receive compliments, because it's like, oh, Kale, you're so great. You did this, you did that. I'm like, yeah, but I learned it from someone else, and they gave it to me, and so now you got it. But
I totally feel you saying that you're a conduit, but at the same time, you're making the choice to show up. You're making that choice. And so we are grateful to you for making the choice to show up and be that conduit.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's been such a good honor.
Because that was Kale that showed up and chose to be the conduit.
Yeah. But it's always like the ceremony hasn't ended for me. I'm still in it. Okay.
Well, it's interesting because that's what it feels like to me, where it's like I can tap into that energy at any time. That energy is here with me, and it's like, oh, that happened. It's happening right now.
Yes.
When we did that meditation at the top of Haleakala, during Maui Prime, I'm sure I've shared this with you, but I literally had to get on my knees and put my face to the ground because of the reverence. This just like the enormity of what I was experiencing brought me to my knees. And I can still access that energy just by thinking about those moments. And I feel them. My heart chakra opens and I feel it in my chest, that same feeling again. Or our wedding ceremony, or being at the Iao Valley. We went back to the Iao River and we did a ceremony there, specifically praying for our family, and magic happened. Within days, our family got cracked open and magic happened. And we know it was a result of the prayers that we said at the Iao Valley. So we have experienced all of that, and much of it is because of your inspiration. So
see, now we're talking re-indigenization. That's
right.
Everything you just said. Right. That's what we're talking about. This is how you can do it. So just to reference people that are listening, because this is what this is for us to connect, and also for other people listening. It's like that. You have an experience somewhere with someone in these places, and that should be a recalling, right? A recalling of the remembrance of what that felt like. So then now you have that energy to be wherever you're at, to still supply the same thing. And I think we talked about this before, of like, if you live in the city, in Brooklyn, and you don't have the jungles of Maui, but you do have a space that you are provided for, or you provide for, and you can still bring about another ceremony in that space that recalls the memory of what it means to belong somewhere. So it's not like a craving for something else. It's like you already have it. And I think we kind of talked about this on our last one. But this is what I mean about re-indigenization. It's coming into a place where home is in the heart. And if you are a heartfelt person, you're a heart-led person, you are someone that can actually have reverence for places and not just trying to impact them with your presence. And now we're talking about an indigenous way. It's like we put up a ceremony, we participate, we involve ourselves, we go on the journey, we awaken to things, and then we close off the ceremony. It's like we're never there. Boom. No trace left. And that's how they want it. They do. It's because if they didn't, then they would have said otherwise. But look at environments. There's environmental degradation. There's impacts that are happening in that way. So I'm just saying, Yes, this is the re-indigenization that I look for. Were you gonna ask a question?
No.
Well, I actually wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit. You had spoken with Adam about sacred combat, and you had said that the feeling that it's savagery is a colonizer perspective. And that really hit me. Like, when you said that, I was like, yes! I saw you on TV. I had that same feeling. The first convergence that I went to, so I'm not the kind of guy that gets into fights. I've never been very physical. I'm not an athlete. I've run from several fights in my life where, like, I took one on the jaw and then I just took off running. And so when I first got to Convergence and I saw the sacred combat, I was like, yeah, this is a little too hyper masculine for me. Like, I don't know if I said this is savagery, but that was the feeling of it, right? Like, this is a little barbaric. I'm not into this. I'm evolved past this, was my attitude.
Right. Totally.
But part of me still, like, I still stood there and watched it, and I still, like, part of me wished I could be a part of it, but my ego was like, if you get in that ring, you're going to be humiliated in front of all these men. So don't do it. That was Convergence 5. Now, fast forward to Convergence 6. And the feelings are already coming in. We're on the beach. The sun is setting. The sacred combat matches are happening, and I'm watching this happen, and I started weeping. I could really feel how you talk about how these things are prayers. I could really feel that. These men setting a container, making an agreement, we're going to box, we're going to grapple, whatever it is, and then afterwards getting on the mic and expressing how they felt about the match or how they felt about the brother. And I was like, oh, this is not savagery. This is not barroom brawling. This is like a dance, or like Adam mentioned, it's like hula, right? Tears streaming down my face watching this happen. And I was like, wow, these are prayers. This is men meeting each other with compassion, and those prayers going up. And then the sun comes down, and what happens? 333 of us turn to the sun to give gratitude, and then a 300-man bear hug and an ohm. What did that actually happen?
I know. Did that actually happen, Danny? Because I just heard your story and I'm going back into the thing. I'm like, wow, that did happen. He remembers too.
That changed my life.
Holy smokes. Beautiful.
Honestly. So now I come home, and let me share how I brought this home with me. There's this guy in our neighborhood who's a real character. He does a lot. He does stuff in the neighborhood that is upsetting to everybody. And I, in my spiritual enlightenedness, I went up to him and I sat down next to him and I tried to have a conversation with him to discuss behavior and say, could you just not? Could we maybe do this instead? And he wanted no part of it. He ignored me. He was mumbling. He was trying to give me the impression he was crazy, so I would just leave him alone. He started mumbling about the Illuminati and 666 and just babbling. I was like, oh, this guy, he was crazy. So now he would do the same behavior every day, 3 times a day, like clockwork, 9, 1, and 6:30 at night. He would
3 times a day?
Yeah. And so over the next couple of weeks, I would get angry every time I see him. This anger would well up inside of me. I'm like, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with this? I feel like a victim. I feel powerless. I'm not going to call the police because I'm not going to risk the police killing this guy over this thing. That it's
of course,
disgusting behavior, but it's not like he's not really putting anybody in danger. Anyway, so I tried again. The next time I got more aggressive and I just screamed at him. Again, he didn't care. So a week ago or 2 weeks ago, He's there doing it again. And so I sit next to him again and I try to do the friendly thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't respond. I said, what do I have to do? Do I have to go upstairs and get a bat? And when I said that, he turned and looked at me and I was like, oh, okay. Like, that sounds like a good idea. So now I had been out walking the dog. So I had the dog. So I brought the dog back. I have a cricket bat. I picked up the cricket bat and I'm standing at the door to my apartment saying, do I really want to do this? Do I want to go down there and potentially get into a fight with this man?
Yeah.
He's bigger than me. So my body responded. My thoughts didn't even respond. My body walked out the door without my permission. I was like, all right, so this has to happen. I get downstairs. I'm in the lobby of my building, and I see him through the glass. He's still there. And I said, it's Friday night. If you get into a fight with this guy and you both get arrested, you're going to be sitting in a cell until Monday until you get arraigned. Do you want to spend the week? Again, I was like, yes. You have to do it.
Gosh.
I went out there. As I leave the building, he's starting to walk away. So now I'm like, I'm yelling at him down the street, do not come back. Do not come back. The neighborhood is sick of this behavior. We're just done. And I said, if you come back, I'm going to fuck you up.
Damn, Danny.
Yeah. And I have to give Nathan Kohlerman a little bit of credit for this because he had just done a live. And the live was like, yeah, sometimes you have to stand up for yourself and, you know, beat just a little bit, right?
You do.
That's what I did. I was beating my chest. And he came back. So now he's like, oh, okay. Now this is the first time he really engaged with me, looked me in the eyes, and I could see his intelligence, right? He's like, all right, so come on, let's fight then. I want to fight. But he was saying these words, but he was standing far back. He wouldn't come close to me. So now that I had his attention finally, I was like, why can't you just be a considerate person? And I'm going to get a little graphic, but this is what he said. He was like, suck my dick. And I said, bro, I'll suck your dick all day long if you just stop doing it. So he
nice
goes,
retort.
Right?
This is, yes.
This
is poetry at its finest.
I came up with a few better retorts after the fact, but
yeah, wonderful. I love that.
So he was like, "Oh, you're gay. Let me get out of here."
That's the only conclusion.
Yeah.
So he left. He hasn't been back since.
Right. Wow.
I was like, wow, okay. So now I'm going back into the building, and by now, because I'm screaming at him, the neighbors, the old lady from the laundromat had come out to see what the commotion was. So I walk back in the building, and some of my neighbors are standing there like wide-eyed, like they can't believe that I just was like carrying on like that. And it made me stop, and I noticed in my body I did not have the adrenaline pumping. Like when you have the adrenaline or the cortisol dump and you're like trembling, your body trembles and you feel that sick feeling. None of that.
Yeah, that quivering. Yeah.
I was like, oh, this was a very conscious thing that I just did. I consciously engaged with him in a specific way. I did not allow my emotions to get the better of me and fly into a rage. That's not what this was. No. I was intentionally putting on a little bit of a show, beating my chest. But to me, it was almost like a form of sacred combat with this man, where we didn't end up in a physical combat, but it was a little bit of a combat.
It was a little bit of a dance, even with him kind of coming back and pretending to want to fight, but then not actually fighting, right?
Yeah.
That was the dance.
So this is how I integrated the concept of sacred combat in like everyday life in Brooklyn. Right?
It's apparently beautiful. But yes, life is a ceremony. So you experience one ceremony in a certain way, right? I do, and then it shows up again. And like, how do you respond? You know, it's the spiraling effect of life. Not just a circle. Like sometimes a circle, it's like you got to one place, right, and then you went around and you're right back at it again, and you do the same thing. Like the pattern shows up again the same way. But when it's spiraling, it's coming around, and once you get there again, it's like, oh, hopefully you matured a little bit. Hopefully you're a little bit more honed in, a little bit more calibrated. You go around, and again, it's like some of us are going to have to experience these patterns of whatever it may be regularly. So fighting, sacred combat, whatever we choose to call it to help us feel better about the thing. That's how I feel. I'm like, it's sacred combat. It's not just fighting, you know? So like, that's cool. But in essence, it's part of our nature as human beings. I don't believe in the service to the highest and best good. To whose standard? To whose idea? What does that mean? You know, as we look at the history of this imperialism and expansionism, no matter where it's from, whether it's European continent, American continent, whatever, you can see that everybody had really great intentions, and then a genocide happened. Mm-hmm. You see what I mean? Because we are not metabolizing our aggression as men. We're not metabolizing our ability to be in confrontation. We don't know how to resolve these things, right? We outsource it. Mm-hmm. So now we take resources from someone else. Now we're into exploitation, right? It goes deep. It's not just fighting, you know what I mean? And like sacred combat, whatever it means to be involved in it. It's a dance. It's a sacred dance. It's lovemaking, you know? The way you fight and the way you fuck. The way you dance, you know, the way you fight. Like never give a man a sword who doesn't know how to dance. So these things go deep. And so what I mean by this is it's in our nature. Whether or not we're experiencing it all the time, especially in this country that we live in, we outsource our wars. Mm-hmm. We put it onto someone else. And then now we're disrupting their lineage and their way to be indigenous, and we're disrupting it. No wonder we're getting the repercussions back. No wonder we don't feel like we're at home. We don't know how to grieve. We don't know how to be in conflict and confrontation, to resolve it and to celebrate it and to cry for it, to weep, like how you're saying, when you saw it at Convergence, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is beautiful. The two men are meeting each other right there on that mutual ground, the commons, with everybody witnessing. And they're choosing to go in to fight, no matter what that looks like. And fight for what? It's whatever they're bringing. I need to do this so that I can be a protector for my family. I need to do this so I can stand up for my neighborhood, for my community, because everybody's upset. And they look to me as a man to be of service, to be handsome in my way, to confront somebody. And I don't need to beat them up. I just need to confront them, because obviously there's something going on with them that I don't know about. They're just as lost as somebody else. And that's the marks of a sane society, that not everybody's insane at once. So then now you have Danny coming in with a cricket bat. You're welcome. Here we are today because of the things that you've been doing every mealtime, 3 times a day. This isn't working. We need to do something else. So that's why I love the sacred combat. I love the fighting, because it helps men and women, you need to participate with this too, with other women, to help understand this aggression and confrontation and how we can shift it, how we can spiral the thing and make it move so it doesn't get stagnant inside of our bodies and we're holding that trauma. You know, it's like just the example you were giving. The man is being disruptive to the harmony and the balance of what we have here in this neighborhood. Whether it's a city or a village, it doesn't matter. It's the ancient future. It's showing up again. So men as protectors and providers need to show up in those ways. For those who are kind of, you know, losing it right now.
Yeah.
It's okay. I don't have to, you know, go beat him up to prove a point. It's not about proving nothing. It's about, you know, the sanctity. It's about the preservation of, you know, not even preservation. It's about the harmony. Just to be in harmony with the space. You want to go be crazy? Go over there. There's a nice tree 2 blocks away. You know, go talk to the tree, brother. You know. So
I think for
with
me,
the combat.
I think for me, it was about specifically individually releasing the shame of feeling powerless, not man enough to deal with this issue. Right. And so I had to step into that. I had to maybe not step into aggression, but into a conscious kind of willingness to stand up and set that boundary. Right. That whereas I might not have been willing to do that. And I think next Convergence, I'm going to have to get into the ring and really.
You got it.
With connecting.
It's the next obvious step, Danny. Yeah. There's no other one. You know?
I think so.
Conclusions. But so this is what I want to. This is what I want. This is what I want to ask you, because I have like my own kind of like understanding of it, but it's like, where do you feel that like kind of that come from, that feeling powerless? like kind of like the shame of it? Where does that come from for you?
I think for me, it's probably going back to childhood.
Uh-huh.
I was never, I think that I didn't have a lot of friends growing up in school. I was always I had my own permanent desk, like in the back of the classroom away from everybody else, because I was a class clown. I tried to talk too much. And so and then my classmates would kind of adopt the same attitude as the teacher, that I was a problem kid. And so I wasn't really accepted. And I think that made me feel vulnerable and weak. And instead of responding by becoming more aggressive or becoming a bully, I responded by just kind of accepting that deflated nature. Yeah, I'm just the weak class clown. Like the clowning is my strength, or the sarcasm, like the wit, that's my strength. So I just hid inside of that and abandoned my physicality. Here instead of being holistic. I think that's where my shame stems from.
Yeah. So what I hear is once again a balance between all the things, right? The emotional, the spiritual, the mental, and the physical. And one thing is not in the same kind of alignment or even at the same standard, as we could say, then you feel it more deeply. But then you become awakened to it. And now you're like, oh, I need to, bring this up more. Like not just up, but enhance it, enhance the life of this particular aspect of myself, so that it can actually be in harmony with everything else that I've tended to and nurtured. So to me, it's like a neglect. And so I feel like in this society, just like what you're saying, similar to is in emasculating. There's a lot of emasculating happening. And a lot of it is done to ourselves, like hyper masculine, right? Like you play on a sports team and it just gets reinforced, right? You are, if you show these kinds of emotions and these feelings, then you are effeminate and we don't want you part of our group. But if you're showing up without all those things and you do as you're told, and not only that, but you are ruthless and merciless in your way, then we'll praise you and we'll put you up. Now you have a role of leadership or something, right? So that happens at a young age. And typically with a lot of, boys growing up that don't fit that mold, of course they're gonna move away from that. Of course they're gonna push that away because it's just inherently is not right. Then you have those that continue on in that mode because it calls to them to be a part of something. So to me, it's artistry, right? If you're not participating in that because you see it for what it is, there will be a time that's going to be called for your artistry to help the masculine regain its harmony and its balance again. So the emasculating quality is that the men do it to ourselves first. The emasculation is that it goes too far towards being a soldier, to take orders, to be commanded on, to be an athlete or some kind of superhero, right? So how do we change that to be more in balance with ourselves and to be, quote unquote, more feminine? It's not being more feminine because femininity already is. It's being in a harmonious masculinity and masculinity with integrity, masculinity with honesty, and commitment and service to. And now we're really talking, because the feminine will always contain. She is like that. She's the portal to life, everything, right? Inspiration, everything that's beautiful comes from nature, and women are the embodiment of such. So when we tap into our masculinity, it's not about neglecting things. It's not about cutting things off too soon. It's about embracing it fully. Like, this is where I'm at. And that's why I talk about the emasculating nature of the society. It's like, if you are not participating in the dominance and the control, then you're not really a man. See, that's not indigenous at all. That's not of a place at all. It's total colonization of the masculine, right? So emasculate those that actually are the artists and the ones that have the imagination to see things differently. Emasculate them and suppress them, so that these ones that will be loyal to the control and to the rational. Now that's where we're at. So the combat helps knock that out sometimes, for both.
Yeah.
I've seen the medicine happen for a lot of our brothers where, they go all out. They're tired, they're ragged, and they have to stand there in front of the man that they just fought and lock eyes and breathe together and take each other in. And it just, something changes, something that I couldn't do, that nobody could do. Only those two could have done it together. And I guess that's what I'm trying to tread upon, is like this way of combat, this way of fighting is inherent to us, but there is a way to bring in the sacred. There is a way to bring in spirit so that it can transmute that, it can alchemize. So yeah, these are like a lot of big things that I kind of have a hard time like articulating, because it's not.
It's deep. These are
it's deep
topics that we will spend the rest of our lives exploring.
And
exactly.
What I love about what you're expressing and sharing is that there's no separation, because I think sometimes, like you were saying, with the titles and with the degrees and all of this, we kind of we create separation with that too, where we say, oh, when I'm in ceremony, this is who I am. But then what happens when you leave ceremony, right? Then you're a different person. And this even happened recently with my friend who for years we've called each other best friends. And she said, I think it's time to let go of the title of best friend, because if I see you as my best friend, I choose to be a certain way with you, and that means I'm being different with everybody else. How can I show up in full vulnerability and full honesty and fullness to somebody else if I have chosen someone to be my best friend? And so she's like, I think we can drop the label and our relationship remains the same, but now I'm open to being that with everybody else that I encounter. I don't limit myself. And I was like, holy cow, yes, how did we never think of this?
I know, right? And then you kind of feel like, oh, I'm not your best friend anymore. Like there's kind of like that feeling too. But then you're like, but what's actually happening to us is great.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's so funny because I came home and I told Danny, I was like, so Carla and I aren't best friends anymore. He was like, now what? And I was like, no, we're best friends with everybody now.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, it's really a form of ownership. It's like a form of colonization too, right?
Totally.
You are my best friend, and you cannot be close to anyone else but me.
Yes.
Yeah. It can be. And I think that's where, so once again, the frame of reference. So it's like, even in many indigenous cultures, there's words for certain relationships, right? No matter what they may be. Related, unrelated, bloodline kind of things. So they have names for that. Like, for example, like in Hawaii, we have so many names for wind, rain, waves, all these things, because, the people are paying attention, but they're also like, there isn't a word for nature to encapsulate it all. There's many words of what that looks like. Like, this is the mottled cloud. This is the cloud that looks like, thundering rain, or this one looks like a ghost specter coming up to you. You know what I mean? That is a relationship, because now you can give a description upon the sensation that's being given to you, right? So it's an invitation for relationship. But then when we try to encapsulate the whole thing, like say like, rain is just rain. Sometimes it rains a lot, sometimes it rains a little bit. It's like, you just cancel out a whole plethora of relationship to this thing that brings life, right? By just saying it's just rain. Like, it's just my best friend. Like, separation. So the indigenizing way is to say, oh, like, you're not just my best friend, you're my friend that I share these kinds of ways with, that enhances our relationship, right? Because the relationship is a being, it's an entity. How is this relationship being fed by the both of us? And what are the things that we do to enhance each other with this relationship? So it's not just like a best friend. It's like, I have this relationship with you, and there's another one over here, another one over here. So it allows for openness to be more, what is that called? Like pictorial, a pictorial language when you recall memory or experiences with someone. Pictures and imagery come through, whether you see it in your heart or in your mind, wherever it's coming from. That is what I believe is inherent to us as people, is before we ever wrote anything down or labeled or created degrees or certifications or titles of best friend and everything, we had that.
Yeah.
And if we operate in those ways and we function in that, that's a re-indigenization. How do I craft a story, once again, for you to fall in love? It's tricky. but very pretty.
Did you have more questions?
No, we pretty much covered everything.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised because I thought I'd want to keep you on here for hours.
I actually wanted to make a comment. We heard the podcast with Adam, and
Yeah.
I was so excited when you were talking about playing video games.
Oh yeah.
because we play video games with Xander all the time,
Yeah.
and I laughed because I was like, am I crazy that we play Fortnite, right? That like
Cool.
Xander introduced us to Fortnite, and I was like, life is like Fortnite. I'm like, you kind of build your tribe, like we play in squad. So I was like, this is how you fulfill your like soul agreement, right? You pick your tribe and you're like, you guys are going to be my tribe. We're going to land on this part of the map, and these are going to be our challenges, and we're going to work at it together, and we're going to gather tools and help each other and help revive each other if we have to. And
Exactly.
Xander, like, I'll carry the meds, you carry the shield, and somebody will carry the map, and we're a tribe. And I was like, oh my god, Fortnite is life.
Totally.
So when I heard
and I
you
love
talking about the video games, I was like, oh my god, I'm not crazy.
You're not, as much as you might think you are, or maybe you are, I don't know. That's why I love it too, because the video games, like, they get a bad rap, but like we got the whole virtual VR coming, here already, and then you have augmented reality and like all this stuff. And, I guess like, just to speak to that as well, is like, as much as I understand, what it means to be claimed by places and to participate with elements and things like that, I'm still in this modern society. Mm-hmm. I didn't grow up in the village. I grew up on an island, with people that were close to the land and subsistence living and things like that. But we're still affected by this society. Mm-hmm. And so once again, it's having balance. Like, okay, this digital virtual reality is here. So how do I maintain my indigenous way and my indigenosity while participating with the technology? And that's key. So what I'm seeing is like with you is you're like, oh, I recognize like how this is very tribal.
Yeah.
This is very like village minded. Like you have this duty, I have this duty. We take care of each other. We're going to see it through these challenges. It's not just to achieve, but it's like, how are we functioning together? Mm-hmm. That to me is how I see it as well. It's like the quality of the experience can still happen in these realms. So here's a quick little story I want to share because it's just kind of funny. We had the Oculus, right, out there at the Leadership Summit. Okay, we're wearing the thing, and everybody's like, and we're playing this Dungeons and Dragons type game. Like you get weapons, you can throw fireballs and magic, and like just these things are it's so crazy, so involved. But then I was just remembering like an ancient future, right? It's like imagine this a circle is made with people, and they're all having ceremony. They're singing the songs in the old language, the chants, and then you have like a doorway, right? Say it's in the west. And then you have the two medicine people, the ceremonialists, and they have the smudge and everything. They're getting ready. And then in the middle of that circle is the freaking headset and the bodysuit, Like it's right there in the middle, and the people are there, and like you would almost suppose that maybe are they worshiping this technology? And it's like no, because in comes the chosen one, right? The human sacrifice, as we should say. They're getting prepared to come in, to go into that reality, to do whatever they have to do. Maybe it's fighting war on another planet. Maybe it's stopping the machines from conquering the village. Maybe it's something. So they have to be reminded of their humanity and their indigenosity, where they belong. So then they go in and they hop into it. But they've been receiving all the blessings and the prayers and the ceremony, the cleansing, the ritual that is needed to go there, because once they're in there, they're part of the machine now. They've lost themselves. And they cannot be helped because now you have a bodysuit that tells you what to feel. And you're still right here in the middle of this ceremonial circle, but you've journeyed off into space somewhere lost, like limbo or purgatory. And then all of that's happening to them when they're journeying through, they're in service for the people. It doesn't even have to be a war. It can be like a council of different people around the world or different planets. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't take care of ourselves ceremonially like that and ritualistic in an indigenous way, right? That helps call upon the elements. Then our people that go into those realms, they will be lost.
Yes.
And they'll choose that over us every time. So we have to bring ceremony into this. So that when they come back and their heart is pulsating and they're breathing and they're just trying to come back home, here we are. The people put hands on them. We sing the songs again. And we got the rattle and drum. Here we go. We got the feather fan. Here we go. Come back home.
Gonna help them reground.
Help them reground. Help them come back to their humanness. You know, and this is a very severe thing because it's here already.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm seeing it here. And am I imagining a future, or am I imagining something that already happened before? You know, is it a dream or is it a vision? And I'm like, this needs to happen now. The ceremonies need to change. You know, the traditions, yes, remain intact and keep the protocols, but now it needs to innovate. It needs to evolve further because this technology is going. You know, like, thank you. Like, this is happening. I can have connection with you.
Yeah.
You know? And we're still, you're when this is done, you're not with me. You're still over there. You know, and we can have these beautiful conversations and people can tap into this and love it so much, but then it's like we're not touching each other.
Yeah.
And that's the key, you know, like embodiment. And that's why ceremony and ritual is so important, because it's ingrained in us. It's part of our ancestral genetics. You know, and you can't.
It awakens us, right? It brings
Yes.
us back.
So it's not about any one person anymore. It's about us. Like, the age of the guru is over. The time of the shaman is over. You know, the way we perceive it in modern society. I'm not saying I'm taking anything away from people who have ceremony and hold that lineage. I'm not. I'm just saying the way that this society is functioning with those things, guru, shaman, medicine man. You know, my shaman's in Colorado and I'm over here in the stock market. Like, what? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're supplying you something that you're not able to do for yourself. Like, we have to come back home, brothers and sisters. We got to understand this. And we all carry medicine.
Yeah.
We all have the ability to bless each other. We all have the ability to pray for each other. And it's not this woo-woo thing about universal stuffs. It's like right here, right at home, you know, to me. Like, you want to pray for the universe, go for it. But I got some prayers for you.
Yeah, and I think it can happen, like you said, it can happen anywhere. And I think the whole concept of re-indigenization brings us back to that knowledge that we are connected no matter where we are. When we went to Peru a couple of years ago, we were up on the mountains, hiking, having a beautiful ceremony, and our guide was talking to us about connecting to the earth and the lands and the elements. And somebody said, well, it's very easy for you because you live out here in the mountains. And he said, you know, the person, I know one person who is more connected than anybody I've ever met, and he lives in a micro apartment in Japan. He goes, he's come a couple of times here, but this man's connection to nature is so strong, and it proves to me that it can happen anywhere. So, and I think about that for us living in Brooklyn, right? We live in a city, and sometimes it's frustrating because, you know, we go to Maui and it's like, oh my God, if I could live in Maui.
Yeah,
for a reason. And I think that part of our work is bringing that sacredness into Brooklyn, bringing that sacredness into the city life, into living in an apartment building. We can be sacred. Our home is a portal. Our home is sacred. And you know, it's not this high-rise modern building. Our home is sacred no matter where we are. And we can go on vacation, we could go on the road, we can go anywhere, and wherever we are is sacred because we choose to bring that sacredness. And that's where I would love if more people would be willing to do that, to know that, to remember that.
Yeah.
I think it's not a matter of achieving a title, like you said. It's peeling away those layers that keep us from knowing that we are sacred everywhere that we are.
Definitely. And it takes that the work, right, of experiencing it like that, so that it lives inside of you.
Yeah.
And that's a great example. Like, I love that story. Yeah, the micro apartment, or what was it? A small apartment with micro plants. What was it? Yeah.
It's a micro
So
apartment. In Japan, they're like tiny houses, but they're apartments.
yeah,
So it's like literally like one small 200 square foot room, and they have all these ways that you convert it to a kitchen and then back to a bedroom.
right. Yeah, and then things get tucked away and they open up.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like in that perspective, it's like, oh yeah, it's very closed off. You don't have all the things that you would like to have, but you have to make do. That's part of our ancestry too. You know, look at the migrations of things as well, like from village to city, or reversed, or going back.
Yeah.
Our people that had that indigenous way of knowing themselves, and they were interrelated, very resourceful, didn't lose the connection, still kept it going. That's why you have these incubations of these different religions, especially with the Ifa, like in the West African religion of Yoruba. You know, they go to Brazil, Colombe, and Santeria, and Hoodoo. You know, it's like the diaspora continues, and the faith continues, but it changes and it morphs. So like the connection still remains, but it takes work, it takes effort.
Yes.
It takes the least likely thing that you want to do. You know, the most uncomfortable things will aid you in the journey. So it's like our greatest pain can be our greatest gift at times. You know,
like
I truly believe
bring
that.
a sacred combat.
Yeah, exactly, exactly like that. and for every tensioning, there's an expansion. You know, there's an expansion through the tension. So yeah, I feel that is a soul project of mine. You know, to not just to endure something till the end, but to really feel and live these things in such a way that I can continue the channel, that I can continue the conduit and be a medium for those things, because I have that ability. It's a gift. It's a gift to want to step into unknown, unfamiliar places, so that I can come back to the people and say, hey, this is what it's like. But I can't tell you what it is unless you go there, and I'd love you to come along, you know, like let's go along for this journey together. As long as we're doing it together, the village will be built, and it's not going to look any way that I say it is. It's going to happen by all of us doing it together. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Show.
We love sharing time with you, Kale. I mean,
and we will follow you to anywhere that you lead us, Kale.
Hey, let's do it. You guys always have a place over here with us. So whenever you want to come back, just let us know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Love you both.
Well, before you go, I want you to tell everybody where they can find out more about you, New Blood Old Souls, the programs that you guys are doing.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So just follow my Instagram. Most importantly, it's just my name, Kale.Ka'alekahi, Ka'alekahi on Instagram.
I'm going to throw all those links in the description of the show. So
cool. And then we also have the New Blood Old Souls up. So what we're doing is creating a video archive that people can purchase video series of like workouts, practices, rituals, methods. And then we also have coursework that comes out. Pasha's is launching tomorrow. I'll have mine starting on February 2nd of next month. And so yeah, look into those. Also doing coaching. I guess we call it coaching now. To me, it's just like one-on-one type things, and I'm open to receive through the DMs on my Instagram or through New Blood Old Souls. And then a lot of work with Sacred Sons, obviously. I'll be on tour with them, going to EMXs, and so I think the.
Oh no, you went mute.
Hello?
Yeah, there you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You're good. We hear you.
Hello?
Yep.
Yes.
We can hear you.
He doesn't hear us. Oh no.
All right. Well, unfortunately,
we lost him.
Definitely check out New Blood Old Souls. So I've been through some of Kale and Pasha's training sessions as a part of the Maui Prime.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, he's back. All right, cool.
Sorry, I think I got a phone call and it just like switched. But yeah, the most helpful thing for me is to just look at the other podcasts I've done, look at some of the things that I'm posting up for, and then just sending a message. That's super helpful.
All right.
Perfect.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
sorry
much.
about that.
Not just for coming on the show, but for everything that you do. Not for the work that you do yourself, for you, for showing up and for being that clear channel and vessel for source energy to flow through you, and it does it so beautifully. So thank you.
Oh, mahalo, Vanessa. Thank you both for having me too. And we'll continue the work, and may those blessings continue to rain down upon your path. And may our ancestors continue to reveal themselves through us and guide us. So
Thank
thank you
you.
both. Aloha.
Oh, aloha.
Aloha.
Well,
I love that, man. As I was saying, I've taken physical, and spiritual classes with both Pasha and Kale. Pasha is Kale's partner in the New Blood Old Souls, and they do what's called functional patterns, and I've learned so much from that. Just from there's the basic concept, as I understand it, of functional patterns, and it's certainly more in depth than this. But most of our health issues come from posture problems. We don't walk the right way. It causes subluxations in our spine, which causes spinal fluid not to move correctly. The messages don't come in clearly. Our organs have trouble communicating with each other. And so that's how a lot of aches and pains and different health issues start. So they start with correcting your posture. I learned this a year ago, and I practice it every day. When I notice that when I'm slouching, I'm not walking correctly, I straighten myself back up and I get back into the walking position that they taught me. And it's not just a matter of like you're correcting this so that you won't have health problems, but it translates energetically. You're walking in a way that gives you more confidence and more presence. And I don't know if it's something you can really understand unless you're actually practicing it.
I think it also comes back to being conscious, right? When you're conscious of your posture, you're more conscious of what's happening around you.
Yeah.
As opposed to walking through life,
just
whatever
kind of
way your body's
through.
like hanging.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. It's about bringing consciousness to every step that you take.
Yes.
Which can maybe sound exhausting, but it actually is empowering. Mm-hmm. So I highly recommend it. I mean, Kale is, sorry, baby. Kale is just, I mean, I'm sure you can tell how much I love him just from the conversation, because he has been such an inspiration to me and such a mentor and a beautiful model of a balance between masculine and feminine. He is equally comfortable with operating in compassion as he is in like sacred combat, right? So, yeah.
So we hope you've enjoyed this episode
as much as we did. Lost in my fanboying.
Thank you so much, and stay tuned for the upcoming shows. And once again, thank you so much. Danny's going to talk about our social media.
So you can follow us on social media. We're on all the major platforms, all these pro-censorship platforms like Facebook and whatever. I don't know how much longer we'll be on there. Eventually, they're going to catch us and boot us off like they've done for most people. But we're also on censorship-free platforms like Minds.com and Float app and Odyssey. Odyssey is kind of like a YouTube alternative. They do not censor. Float app and Minds are both more like Facebook kind of apps. So those are cool. If you want to check those out, we're also on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. So you can follow us on those things. If you like what we're doing and you want to support us with an energy exchange, we're on Patreon. So you can check that out. We've got a lot of cool perks there. You can get some of Vanessa's art. And I said last week I was going to have pictures of her art to post up during the show, and I forgot, but maybe by next week we'll get that together. Next show, we are excited to have Charlie and Shelly Winninger on. This is going to be on January 23rd. We're going to be on the road, so we're going to have to figure out how to, we may just be broadcasting from the road there.
Maybe. We'll see.
And then next week we will be in Texas in Austin for the Greater Reset. Check out thegreaterreset.org. The whole conference is free. It's 4 or 5 days worth of awesome speakers. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Foster Gamble, Ben Swan, James Corbett, all kinds of amazing people. And it's all free. Available at thegreaterreset.org. You can stream it. So please check that out. You can sign up and you'll get notifications about that as well. We're going to be speaking about how physical sovereignty is a natural extension of spiritual sovereignty. So we're basically going to be talking about re-indigenizing your soul with the intention to become more sovereign. So thank you all again for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. And we hope you have an amazing weekend.
Happy Sovereign Sunday.
Happy Sovereign Sunday.